this machine, because we thought one of the best ways, besides talking, is actually hopping out there, showing some of the configurations, some of the different things you can actually do with WordPress. Is there anybody out here who's already used WordPress at all? Wow, most everybody. Cool. Kind of what we're going to talk about in this one is, basically what is WordPress, how we can use it, some of the different functionality that helps with podcasting. We're also going to address a little bit of WordPress.com site, because we know some people, have the technical knowledge to, install WordPress like on their own hosting site. Some people don't do that; they just want to be able to use like WordPress.com, where they do the WordPress hosting for you. And we'll kind of explain some of the differences, because WordPress.com, you don't have quite all the functionality to install, like a lot of the more advanced plugins and things like that you might want to do. But it still does provide a good platform if you want to do a podcast. You can go ahead and provide the RSS feeds, do the encapsulation for your actual audio files. You're getting there. Almost to the dashboard. Okay. Did you want to talk about some of the differences for, more of the limitations from the WordPress.com perspective? The nice thing about WordPress.com is it's free.
It's free. If you want to try out WordPress, you can sign up for an account there. The limitations are you cannot install your own plugins. You cannot install your own themes. They have pages and pages of themes and a bunch of plugins already set up, but you can't install any of your own. So if you're just wanting to dabble in WordPress and try it out, you can sign up for a free account there and do hosting. You can also, if you already have a domain name and you want to let WordPress.com host it, you can post your domain name to your WordPress.com account as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice way for getting in, trying it out, or for someone who's just getting into podcasting, if they really don't want to have the funds of getting a hosting provider and trying to get all that stuff set up. WordPress.com, they can go out and get the free account and actually get going rather quickly. Since a lot of the stuff's all predefined, the learning curve is a lot smaller, you can get into it. And then eventually, if you want to do more things with your podcast, video cast, whatever you're doing, you could eventually move over to just another normal hosting account and being able to have a little bit of flexibility by having your own WordPress installation at that point.
Yeah, also if you're going to use WordPress.com to podcast or video cast or something out of, you're not going to have space like you would with a private hosting provider, so you're going to have to host your media files somewhere else, like archive.org or another Libsyn account or somewhere else that will allow you to host your media there and use the bandwidth.
Do you have suggestions on if you wanted to go beyond WordPress.com on who are good providers that are kind of WordPress friendly for hosting?
Well, one thing, WordPress, that is one of the top blogging software that's out there. You're going to find that a lot of the different hosting providers, even the big name ones to small ones, a lot of them have through their control panels where they have like the one-click install. You can say, I want WordPress, and they'll go ahead and do the install for you, which will set up the database, get the base WordPress installed on there. Yet you can still, by uploading your own files, add the plugins, do the more advanced stuff. But you're going to find that a lot of the hosting providers, that WordPress is a very common application that they have that you can install through the control panels.
If you go to WordPress.org, where you can download your own copy of WordPress, they have some links right there on that main page of WordPress-friendly hosts, and also people that will help you install and different things like that. So. Should we go ahead and walk through the dashboard in WordPress? So after you install WordPress, and to install it, it's literally pretty much, you have to set up the database. But to install WordPress itself, it only takes a few minutes, and you unzip it, you lay it down in the directory, and it walks you through a couple of steps to install it, and away it goes. And that gives you the base install. Once you log in, it'll give you a default admin password. You can go in and change that. But once you log in, you end up with your dashboard. Your dashboard kind of lets you know what's going on. It shows you any comments that are recent. It shows you your posts. If you've got people linking back to you, it'll show you link backs. It used to use Technorati. Now it uses link backs through Google, blog, search, and I don't like that so much. It doesn't really show exactly what's linking back to you. You can change that.
Not quite like you have with the Technorati.
No, but it can be changed. And it just kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. Some stats there, just how many posts are in your blog, how many comments. If you had things waiting moderation, it would show you that all right here at your dashboard. It's really hard to navigate.
It's more difficult than you think, isn't it?
All right. This is one of the key things I like the most with WordPress is you've got your editor to write your posts, to write your pages. You can go in and use the code. You cannot use the little fancy
WYSIWYG.
WYSIWYG.
And you got the WYSIWYG editor so if you're someone that doesn't know HTML, you can use the WYSIWYG editor, and it's just like using like a little version of Office or any other word processor. It can do the bold and italics. It can handle the code for if you want to insert an image, create a web link. It has all the little tools to do that for you. You can do block quotes that'll indent. A lot of little features there. If you're someone who knows HTML and you want to get in and actually do the code, you can switch over to the other tab where it's code. You can put in raw HTML if you want to have full control of the formatting. And when you have a user account in WordPress, you can actually decide what your default is. You know, if you're the hardcore, you want to put the code in all the time, you can say that's my default for editing. If you want to do the WYSIWYG, you can have that as the default too.
WordPress refers to it as the visual editor. That's what it is.
Visual editor.
Yeah.
Which of course is WYSIWYG.
You've got a place at the bottom of your post to put tags, so you can organize things by categories over here, which for navigation, or you can organize it solely by tags. You just use tags to help index your content for searching locally, for searching with Google or any other search engine.
The tags are recent with the last couple of versions of WordPress, and this is going to help when you start talking about your search engine optimization or your SEO for your website. WordPress has, with the tags and some of the other things you can do with permalinks, which we'll get into in a little bit, it can really help by having very nice descriptive terms for your different posts, for your podcast episodes that you're putting up, and helps a lot with the search engines, with the Google and everybody else on having the good keywords and phrases for people being able to, find your posts, find your website, and anything that you have related to them.
What I use it for the most is you've got your categories, and you may not want to have too many categories. So if you're doing say you've got a food podcast or food blog, and you've got a category that is sandwiches, and maybe you want to narrow it down even more. Well, then instead of having a giant hierarchy of categories, you could narrow it down more in the tags to be more descriptive per post. And there's some additional plugins you can add in WordPress. WordPress can expand as much as you want it or be as limited as you want it. So one of the plugins I like to use tells me related posts. So if you go to one of my posts, at the end it'll say related content, and it's using those tags to decide what else is in my blog or podcast that has that same type of information. So if you read that and you like it, you're like, okay, I just read a post about Twitter and I want to know what else you said about it. Because of my tags, you'll find at the end some related items that you might want to read more, and that'll keep visitors at your site digging through more of your content as well.
And that'll automatically do
The tags are what different plugins use to index. One of the plugins we'll go over in the advanced WordPress is related categories or related posts, and it uses those tags to decide what's related.
See, one of the powerful things about the WordPress is kind of like what Krista was saying, is you can use it very minimally and still get a really nice looking site with a lot of features, and yet you can go advanced, you can put all kinds of plugins, widgets, and have things where it does a lot of the content or a lot of management of the content for you. And one of the great things is, especially with different themes, as we start showing you like the front page, different themes can actually give you areas to provide more content. You can have it where it's primarily your blog, and then showing your different podcast episodes as you publish them. Or you can have a lot more stuff on the sidebar where you get a lot of that cross information where you can find out what are the different categories. So if somebody comes out, finds your podcast, finds your website, maybe they can go to specific categories. Or they can look at all episodes and find everything that's related. They can see comments from other people who are listening to your show. Because that's one of the things. Whenever you have a podcast, you want to have a website that promotes yourself, but at the same time gives a place where people can be interactive. Because you want to be able to have listeners come in, have a place to leave comments, have links to your site, and you can start linking to other friend sites. And there's a lot of the widgets and other components of WordPress that make that very easy to do without having to know all the technical details of HTML. This has a lot of stuff all built in for you. That's one of the nice things about WordPress. You can make it be what you want. Whether you want to go minimal, just go very simply, simple install, or using pre-installed through a hosting provider, or if you want to go all out, and tweak this thing out, hit every little plugin and widget, change the look and feel. You can go from A to Z and everywhere in between. That's one of the nice things about WordPress.
I would comment, every post or page that you write, you have the option under discussion to allow comments or allow pings. So usually if you're writing a static page, you may not want comments on those pages because a static page you may have your contact information about your site and other static information, so you don't want people leaving a bunch of comments there. Post is typically where you want the conversation to build. So you can allow comments. You could turn it off if you're just doing hey, I'm going on vacation for a couple weeks, just want to let you guys know there won't be any podcasts this month. You may not want a bunch of comments on that type of post, so you could turn it off there. Allow pings also is what allows the trackbacks to be posted into your comment fields. So if you've seen on some other sites, like one that comes to mind is Mashable or TechCrunch, if you start scrolling through all those comments, you'll see something that looks like a part of a post from another site with a link, but it wasn't somebody that typed something in. It's just like part of somebody else's post. They've linked back, and so it's posted, literally, their link and the excerpt that applies to that link as a trackback. So you can keep track of who's linking and get that benefit of that link back for your own site.
And that's actually one of the things when you go into the dashboard, it'll actually show you incoming links from people who have come to your site recently, and where they've come from, if they've come from other links, which is really nice because when you've got a podcast or video cast, whatever you're doing, you want to know what's out there. This really helps to know where people are coming from. You may find when sites start linking to you, you may find that right away because you go in the dashboard and you can see that, hey, somebody came to you today from this other site. So you can start seeing the different link backs and then start using that as along with what's out there in Google to find out what's your information, how's your site being promoted out there, also helps to know what content that you're putting out there in these episodes are people linking to. You may find that there's only certain types of shows that you're presenting that people are linking to. It might help you decide that maybe I need to, I'm getting more hits off when we talk about this particular niche over than when we're doing this general stuff. So it can actually give you a better idea of what do people want to hear. So even if you're not getting direct feedback from people putting comments in or sending emails, you can find a lot just from what are people linking to on your site.
There's a few more fields over on the side here. You've got a post password, so if you wanted password access only to maybe paid content or private content because you're collaborating with someone, you can apply a password so that only people with that password. And it'll be one password. This field is not for allowing different users with their usernames to log in at this point. This is one password for everyone. So if you have 5 people you want to access that post, you've got to give them all that same password. You've got post status. So as soon as you hit the publish button up here, it's going to become published. You've got pending review. So this is all stuff you can manage in your users if you are running a larger site with multiple authors. Some people may not be allowed to hit the publish button and instantly go live. It may go into review for other people to see. You may want to save it because you're collaborating with someone and you want them to come see it. You've got draft, which will not be published at all. You've got private, which only logged in users with the rights that designated will be able to see it. It won't be available to the unlogged in public. You've got the post timestamp here. This is one of my favorite features of WordPress. That will automatically be applied to when you've published it, when you've written that post. But if you've written something the night before, you don't want it to go out till the next day, we've done our episode and actually had it edited and ready to go a day or even more sometimes in advance.
Usually not, but once in a while.
Once in a while, but we don't want to lose our schedule. We'll publish on Tuesday, so we want it to go out on Tuesday. Just because we're done on Monday doesn't mean we want it out there. We could still go ahead and write our post, upload our file, and set that edit timestamp checkbox to the date and time that we want it to go out. So Monday night at 9 o'clock, we can have that, go ahead and hit the publish button and have it set to be published at 9 a.m. the next day.
You know, that's real handy because I know some different sessions, you know, one of the things people always say if you got the podcast, especially when you're trying to keep listeners, keep a consistent schedule. This is one of the little features of WordPress that really helps you do that. You know, if you got listeners that are expecting to see a new show, you know, every day or every Monday at 8 o'clock, they always know, like, hey, here's your newest episode. This can help you do it. So if you've recorded on Saturday or Sunday and you've got it all ready, go ahead and set the date in the future, and this one will go ahead and take care of that for you. So that's one of the nice features for, you know, keeping everything timely. It's also great in case you want to, maybe you're going to go on vacation for a couple weeks. If you don't want to break that cycle for putting out your show, go ahead and record 2 of them. Have it set up ahead of time to create your post, and you can have these things automatically get posted while you're nowhere near your site. So that's really handy. You're going to take 2 weeks vacation. No one necessarily even has to know. So you can have this for putting up new episodes of your podcast, or just putting up other little blogs that you put out there that pertain to, you know, what your podcast, your show is about.
And that doesn't require any special plugins or anything?
No, that's base. So that even if you're at WordPress.com, you've got that functionality because that's base functionality in WordPress. That is very, very handy. You can make people think that you're just diligent. You're there all the time. I'm putting this post out here. Look at me doing this episode. You could be gone off in Africa for a month. They wouldn't even have to know. So it's great for that. That's one of the. I mean, it's a minor feature, but when you're trying to do something like a podcast, it really, really helps that you can keep that content going. And of course, you know, even for search engines, the more that you've got new content showing up, the better you're going to get for linking back from Google. If you've got a static page, you know, all the time, you don't get indexed as well. So if you've got a show that maybe you're producing once a week, you may want to have other blog posts that are related to your content just for other things in your website. This way you can do some of them ahead of time, have those things showing up, and that also helps with your indexing from a lot of the search engines.
Now you've got the option here to upload a file. You can link it, if you're doing an image, you can link to a URL straight from that visual editor or any other type of HTML link. You can also upload your files like this. And then you can use the Browse All button to browse other ones you've uploaded. You can put in your excerpts. You can put in specific trackbacks. If you're writing a post based on somebody else's posts at another site, you could put their link directly in if you want to make sure it comes back to them. And you've got all kinds of stuff you can do with custom fields. Now, if you're doing, we'll keep this right here since we're already on the right. If you're doing a podcast and you need to be able to, one of the things is you've got podcatchers. Podcatchers are how people subscribe to your podcast and they need to be able to download your content, which is going to be embedded in your post. WordPress allows you to just inline link straight here into your post, the file, and it will take care of the enclosure tag. If you've used the full URL, you can't just use a partial URL. You're in your home directory and you're doing your HTML code. You can't just refer to the local file. You're going to have to need to put in the entire URL. And then WordPress will do the proper enclosure so that a podcatcher can pull it. iTunes has a little bit more requirements for the iTunes feeds to come through, and there's some plugins that can help you with that. But if you're doing this just for a standard podcatcher and not an iTunes specific, or you can use FeedBurner to pipe it through.
Yeah, I was going to say you could do whatever site about use FeedBurner and then submit that for iTunes.
Yes.
So they're more picky.
FeedBurner will process your feed and set it all up for iTunes for you. as well.
Now, I know we hadn't mentioned, but one of the things that's built into WordPress is the generation of the RSS feeds for you. So if people are running the aggregators or podcatchers, whatever they're using, this thing will automatically, from the post that you put in here, will generate the RSS feeds for you. That's kind of an important thing, because you have a lot of people that don't necessarily want to hit your site all the time. They want to use the feeds, because they can have something automatically downloading your latest episode, your latest show, and this will do that for you, and it can do RSS feeds off your entire site, showing all the different posts and episodes, or it can do it for a particular category.
And you would then, though, have to put that in, you'd want to put that in your sidebar with,
Yes.
subscribe.
Yes,
Those
and that's one of the things we're going to get to here is when we show you what's called the pre-built widgets that you can plug into your theme. They already have some for like the RSS feeds. And as a general rule, I don't know what browsers you use, but most browsers now, if they go to a website that has a published feed, I know like I use Firefox, there's a little RSS icon right next to the URL location bar that you can click on. The WordPress will automatically generate the HTML code for that. So your main feed will show up just like all the others are, which is an important thing because there's a lot of people that use like the live bookmarks and other stuff to go ahead and say, I want to go ahead and follow this feed. So it'll do that for you. That's one of the nice things that, so you don't have to go through and know all the technical knowledge of how to build an RSS feed. WordPress will go ahead and do it for you.
So if I have an RSS feed burned through FeedBurner, I can import that into iTunes, and it should put me on as a subscriber from there?
Well, there's special things you have to do for the iTunes, right?
Okay.
Yeah, if you're taking a FeedBurner feed, is that what you were?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in FeedBurner, there's an option to burn the feed as a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it will, there's some check mark boxes in one of the settings that allows you to set it up specifically for iTunes.
Mm-hmm.
So FeedBurner will do what it needs to do to make it work with iTunes, so that iTunes will get iTunes looks for specific enclosure information and some other tags. So if it sees what it needs to see, it'll see it as a valid iTunes. Other podcatchers will ignore that information that iTunes needs specifically. So FeedBurner takes your feed and burns it the way it needs to be burned for iTunes. So then you can take your FeedBurner URL into iTunes, drag it over, and iTunes will be able to handle it.
Now, WordPress itself is, out of the box, just using its basic functionality. It's not going to be able to, you can't tell it saying, when you present my feed, present the FeedBurner feed.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that you're going to have to either go in and modify the theme that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the themes in the header portion is where, and they're using one of the built-in function calls for WordPress to say get the feed. You can replace that, with the text editor, and then you could actually put in your FeedBurner feed. Then that would be what shows up when you have like the icon on the up in the location bar for subscribing to a feed.
Right. Now, if I do a lot of video, so if I embed a video, say from YouTube or whatever, will that go into the iTunes? Do you know?
Now that's where you're going to have to probably do this enclosure. In every post you have a custom fields section, and especially it applies as well if you're hosting your media at archive.org, because it does some redirecting. And so if you just do the link, the inline link, it's not going to, the podcatcher isn't going to pick it up as an enclosure, because there's a little redirect in there, and YouTube has a little redirect, and a lot of other hosting sites have the redirects.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do a key and call it enclosure, and then put the entire URL there, it will then see it as an enclosure.
I gotcha. Okay, cool.
One other thing, you can't actually use YouTube to post through an RSS feed through iTunes, because it's in a different format. It uses Flash, and you can't view that in iTunes or on your iPod.
Correct. For you to subscribe, matter of fact, iTunes won't work with WMV either. So if you want to subscribe to a podcast in iTunes, it has to be .mov, .m4v, MP4, AAC, MP3 format for it to actually work in iTunes.
Okay.
And see, that's just another general consideration too, is when you're, anytime you're doing a podcast, is the format you're putting stuff out. Granted, the most common right now is going to be your MP3. Now, I know for ourselves, the Alternative Geek podcast that we do is we have a lot of people who are into tech, listening to us. A lot of people do things under Linux, use open source. We're also starting to provide our feed in two different formats. MP3, the other one is the open source OGG audio format. The first time we did that was mainly because we actually had an episode where we talked about the different codecs, the different types of encoding you may use, and we went ahead and put an OGG one out there, and then we were actually surprised at the number of people that started downloading the OGG format instead. So we're actually starting to look at now, and actually I think for the last, 10 or 15 episodes, we actually have an MP3 file and we have an OGG file, and we've actually got separate feeds set up for whether somebody wants to subscribe with the OGG feed or the MP3 feed.
Now, how do you set up your separate feeds if it's all in the one WordPress page?
Actually, what we're doing is, that one takes a little bit more tweaking. We're actually having to double post. We're going to put both posts up there. But then the feed, instead of being the overall feed for the website, we can have a specific feed for WordPress that says, build a feed for this category. So we have a special category for any of the posts that we do with OGG, and then so that you can have that feed go for that category only.
Are the categories based upon your tagging, or?
They're based upon categories.
Oh, categories, which is a separate.
You actually configure your categories.
So if you're doing default, we haven't gotten into permalinks yet. So if you just do WordPress as a default install and have it set up permalinks, all the categories have a number. If you go into manage categories, every category you create has an ID number. So by default, if you're going to do a feed off a category, you see you've got your domain name wp-rss2.php cat equals and a category name. So if you want to do a feed off of several categories, you could add several. You can exclude categories if you want to do your entire site as a feed. Let's say you wanted to keep out maybe site news because you didn't want all that in there. You could actually exclude categories too, right there from the URL. By putting in a minus, and you can actually exclude several categories.
So WordPress gives you a lot of function, and this is all built in.
Built-in, no plugins.
And pretty much that's what you're doing is when you present your feed out there, you present the URL. Using these customizations, you can really do a lot with customizing your feed, what content people are going to get. And that's really nice because I've seen some sites where people do different shows and they kind of have different types of show they do, and they know that some people may want to have only these. And you have the ability to very simply, by just having a different URL for a feed, give people the ability that maybe they want to see just these particular episodes or these particular instances of your show, and because maybe they don't want the whole site feed. But it's going to be up to you with your audience, your listeners, on what you want to provide. But this has a flexibility so you can get as specific or generic as you want. Now, one thing when we're looking at this, and Chris was talking about all your categories and posting, is they're just sequential numbers. So when you add a category in, WordPress is just taking the next index value and assigning that index value plus 1 to your new category. Well, when you're talking about search engines, you want people to be able to find. You want people to be able to find your different shows, your different posts, and finding your feeds. Well, if you've got something like this, the only thing that's really unique right here is going to be your domain name. Well, maybe
It's kind of ugly, and you don't want to give somebody, what's your feed? Oh, it's so-and-so.com / blah, blah, -18 + 22 -
and so anybody sees these links, the search engines, or if somebody's on another page that sees a link, it's not descriptive. It doesn't tell you a lot. And one of the features that WordPress has is what's called permalinks. It's where it actually gives a nice textual name, well, as nice as what you enter. Gives a textual name, so it actually you can create more descriptive links, which is very good when you're talking about your search engine optimization. You want people to be able to find you on Google, Yahoo, MSN Search, or any of those out there. And with the permalinks, it'll actually say you'll have your domain name / then the word category / and then may have the actual category name. So if you had, back to what we talked before, if you had a category called sandwiches, you get some kind of cooking show, it'll actually say sandwiches, and then after that we'll have the specific name for an episode.
So you have to refer to the number, but they'll see the name you assigned to the category?
This WordPress, by using the option of what they have called permalinks, you can have it do all this for you. But as a default, when you go to when you have WordPress installed, it does not turn that on. You have to go turn that on. But I'll tell you what, when you're out here, if you want people to be able to find you, that for WordPress, that's a very important feature that you want to look. Can you do the permalinks on WordPress.com?
WordPress.com has the permalinks turned on.
Okay. And it's very, very important for your search engines. It really gives you a big boost. And what's nice is when you create a post out there, when you define permalinks, I guess that's got some of that there. You can tell WordPress how do you want it to construct the names for your categories, the names for your posts.
Slugs. And it'll create these slugs automatically based on your title. So if you have a title that's 12 words long, that post slug may be 12 words long with dashes in between. Your categories will be probably usually with dashes. But if you want to be specific, if you want to make that shorter than what the title is, you can put that in. It has to be original, and WordPress will never accidentally name something the same thing twice, even if you have the same titles. It'll change that slug so it doesn't get confused in the database.
And so when you're creating your post, whatever you have for your title, it'll make that all lowercase, change spaces over dashes to create your slug or your identification for that particular post. Or, like Chris was talking about, they actually have a place where you can specify, hey, for this post, I want to go with this particular slug. So you can override that, which is real handy. So you may want to have a long title, but maybe you want to keep the URL, keep that slug name small. You can override that on a per post basis.
That's for posts, that's for categories, and that's for pages as well, so the pages that you create. Which then, if you create something, so you've got your about page, and then later on you add something else in that you've got about your site, and you've got a page called About the Post. And later you decide you want to combine that in one, but you don't really want to break things. You can rename your slug then after you've deleted another page, and then that replaces the other one. So if people are using the pretty permalinks, that would be your site /about. That used to go to a different page. If you completely wipe that out and replace it with an old one, if you change the slug, it'll now go to the Let's see what else we got. Go over options. Let's show you where to change it.
And there's a lot of configuration options in WordPress, just the base ones for like your particular blog title.
The tagline, the URL, it's going to find it, which when you install WordPress, it'll fill that in.
A lot of the themes you have will automatically pull the titles or the taglines and have them displayed in different places depending on the theme.
This is where you can decide if people can register, if they have to be logged in to comment, if you're just going to allow anybody to comment whether they've ever logged in or not. Decide your time zone.
If you feel really,
date starts.
if you really feel like taking a chance and letting people, just put comments in without logging in, so that's.
How big your visual editor is, where things are going to default post, default links. You can post via email if you've set up a mail server and log in. I know at some of these sites you've seen, like at Flickr, you can generate some real long, crazy looking email address. You can do the same thing. You can just set up an email address somewhere and have WordPress go check that account so that you can, log on the run or send things via email. And it'll take that and then post it based on which account you've set up. I have that set up on one of my blogs, so I set up a special account because it kind of freaks me out sometimes to just go willy-nilly with it. So I've created a special author that has permission to post from the email account. We'll post to a special category, and I've set up some crazy, long, random-looking Gmail account that is going to go check the pop on that and pull it out.
Will it automatically post?
Yes.
Okay. Blogger used to automatically post, and now they don't.
If you set your default category to be drafts, it might not post. You can decide if you want it published or not.
Where do you find this on WordPress? Under permalinks?
This is under writing.
Under writing.
Under options and then writing.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's one thing. WordPress, there are tons of options for any type of thing you want to configure. And as you add plugins, a lot of the plugins will add new tabs to options. So it's kind of like what we said before. WordPress, you can go minimal, you can go advanced. You can just get crazy with this. And as you add more plugins, there's just all kinds of things that you can tweak out with plugins, the widgets, the themes.
You can decide under the reading options if you want your front page to display your posts on an ongoing basis like a blog, or if it has a static page and and you can set whichever static page you created to be the front page.
You know, it might be that maybe instead of having like your normal all your different posts being displayed like a general blog, I've seen some where they come in and the main thing goes to a static page that's really giving the background, saying, hey, here's who we are, here's what our show is, you know, here's when we publish and all stuff. And then they might have a widget on the sidebar that has, you can see all the, like here's the last 10 episodes. And people click on that and all your RSS feeds, recent comments, and you know, WordPress gives you that flexibility so you can, you know, by using different themes and by using the widgets and all these different configurations, you have a lot of say over what you can do with the site without having to, you know HTML, know how to install this on the back
And
end
your
system.
WordPress install doesn't have to look like a standard blog. You can have a WordPress install and it doesn't look anything like what people would consider a typical WordPress blog site would look like. This is where you can decide how your feeds get sent out, how many are sent out by default, full text, or if you want summary. At any time that you use the More feature, so if you just want to snip it on your front page and somebody has to click the post to go into the rest of it, if you use that More feature, then you will only get summaries. You'll only get that content before the More tag in a feed. You won't get the entire post if you use that.
Just one more thing, it gives you a little flexibility in how you want, you know, how much content in the feeds.
And if you don't like that, there's plugins people have written already so that you can get around that and still have the More tag.
So if you were doing 10 posts in your syndication feed, though, that would mean that your feed for your podcast would not have all of your shows, like all 50 shows?
It would show the most recent 10.
Just the most recent 10.
If you want to put 50, if you want to put 100, then it'll show. It'll pull all.
And you know, it's kind of different. I've seen a lot of different people out there with feeds where they just got summaries or excerpts, which I guess we didn't show that, but you can actually define. If you want an excerpt, that's some of that's functionality built into WordPress. It'll like take usually like the first 50 words out of your post, make an excerpt. Or as you write the post, there was another section down there where you can write a custom excerpt. So even though you have a post, if you want just smaller excerpts in your RSS feed, when you write that post, you can get real specific. If you want to have a nice specific short that gives people the idea of the entire post without instead of describing the first 50 words, gives you a little bit of control on how this stuff shows up in your feed.
Under discussion is where you can decide what people can, how they can communicate with you through your blog. So you've got attempt to notify any blogs linked to the or from the article. So anybody that's given a track back, you can ping them back with updating your article. You can list a lot of the ping-o-matics, the Technorati pings, Google pings, all these other sites. So every time you write a post, it goes out and tells all these sites that you use through here. Hey, I've updated my site, come check it out. And they all know, and then they can scan your content really quickly.
Just one more thing, it's all stuff for trying to get your information out there, trying to find new listeners, find people who want to come see your or listen to your podcast, listen to the shows. Just one more way of getting that information out there with all these different sites. And then, of course, it's all so information normally gets picked up in all the search engines too. So a lot of these little details they have and the different options are, if you think about it, really comes down to, when you're trying to find listeners, trying to get the word out there. These are just all the different options from WordPress that helps you do that in conjunctions with the sites like Technorati and some of the other ones out there.
Most of that's pretty explanatory. If you decide if you want to approve or disapprove or like if they've got to fill out information, a lot of times if they've got to fill out information, it's going to help reduce some of the spammers, not necessarily all the time, but how many hoops do you want to have people jump through? If you want to be emailed, if you want to specify certain things to go automatically into moderation, this is where you can list all those Xanax ads and stuff that get stuck on the blog. List all those words there if you wanted to, or you can use plugins to do that. Same with the blacklists, but they note here as well. Whatever you put in there, it's going to match anything as a wild card. So if you put press, it's going to match anything that has the word press. It's going to be pressing, it's going to be WordPress, it's going to be news press, it's going to be anything. You don't have to use a wildcard character. It assumes wildcard. So if you're not real sure what you're going to do with that, the moderation is best because then it doesn't automatically delete it. It's going to send it to moderation. You can kind of keep track of how it's managing.
And from the dashboard of this place, you can go in and then you can look at each one and actually, either approve the comment, so it gets published. You can delete it. You can mark it as spam, which is really gives you a lot of flexibility over trying to manage the comments and stuff that's coming in.
And privacy goes with those ping services. Would you like your blog to be visible by search engines and things? Well, if you're doing a podcast, you probably do want everybody to know about it. You probably aren't keeping it private, unless maybe you're doing literally a corporate blog or corporate podcast or something that you don't want the general public to know about. Then you might want to block that. Permalinks is where you search your permalinks. There's the default category and post IDs. You can go by date and name based. You can go by numeric, that's still a pretty. You can do custom, which most people tend to do custom.
And there's all the different fields that you can specify where you can tell how you want it to construct the link for your posts. So it gives you a lot of flexibility because you got all those predefined. So if you want to have the date and time stamp as part of the post name, if you want the category, you want the author, you've got a lot of flexibility in how you tell WordPress that you want it to automatically create that link or that naming convention for your different posts. And yet again, for each individual post, you can still override portions of that by putting in a custom slot.
And I'm trying to we've done it really minimally with our categories because we've got the podcast, we've got blogs that we publish. So we've got only a few categories. So all the podcasts are put into the podcast category. So you go to alternativegeek.com/podcast/ and the episode title name that we published. And if you want to, if we publish something under our own names as part of our blog that we try to update, you'll go to, let's see, we're under hosts. So you'll go to hosts or our name or just our name and then publish. And then our site information is all kept under a blog category. So that way, when we're building our feeds for these specific information, if you want the feed for the podcast, if you want the feed for the blog, we've already built the categories to enable us to help build the feeds off of that simple information.
So now it's a lot easier for, if you're trying to tell something, you're talking to somebody and they hear about your podcast and you want to tell them your feed, well, if you're using the default, that's when you get into where you're going to have to say, oh, my domain name / wp-rss2.p. It's hard for somebody to remember.
And if you just want to give them that special category feed, then in your browser you see the little RSS icon up here. So if someone's in that category, if you say, my podcast is at mysite.com/podcast, that takes them to the category site. Go straight into our category site. So there's our categories for podcasts. Then they can actually click this, and that will take them to that RSS feed for the category without you having to remember what the RSS feed address is in the category. WordPress will do it right then and there. Miscellaneous. That's just decides where you want to put your uploads. When you were writing the post and there was a place where you could upload, that's what decides where it's going to go. That presentation is where you put your themes. You've got themes are very easy to use. There's a wp-content/themes, and everything has its own directory, and then it shows up here based on how good someone's built the theme. Some of them you'll see have previews, some of them don't. Depends if they uploaded the image. And literally to change your theme, you just click the theme and it changes it. So I just changed the theme by doing that. And that's all it took to change it.
And with WordPress, one thing that's very nice, there are literally thousands and thousands of themes that are out there. And since WordPress is used so much, there's a lot of very high quality themes. And there's such a variety. So depending on how you're trying to present your show, how you're trying to present your podcast, if you want maybe a fun theme or you want something that's real professional looking, there are just absolutely just tons that you can pick from that are out there that are free. There's also a lot that you can pay. There's some that are commercial where maybe they want $40, $50 for a theme, which, depending on what your goal is, that's really not that much. But like I said, there's so many free themes. commercial themes, there's, you know, you can check out these and pull these down and use them, you know, any way you want. The only limitation you have is if you're out at WordPress.com, where they're hosting the thing, your site for you, you can't actually install new themes. You have to use the themes that they already have. Now they have, they got tons of pages out there for the themes. But once you get to the point where you've got your own hosting service out there, you know, your own account on a hosting account, and you're managing it, you can pull, you know, any themes that you want and change these as often as you want. It doesn't change, you know, any of your links. It's just the changing the look and feel.
These are your widgets. Widgets are fun. Some things, this is going to depend on the theme. This is built into WordPress. I think it used to be. This is now built into WordPress, but some themes may not be widgetized, which may not allow you to dynamically change your sidebars. Some have one sidebar. Some themes have 3 sidebars. Some themes have been built so the entire theme itself is a giant sidebar. So you have 6 different sidebars, so you can move stuff in the header, move stuff in the footer.
So when you're looking for themes, if you want to have the greater customizations, you want to look for, they're normally called widget-ready themes. And most of the places out there will tell you whether a theme is widget-ready or not.
Some of the default widgets you have, your tag clouds. So here's your tags you've seen on the websites where people have tag clouds, and some tags are bigger than others because there's more content tagged with that word. This builds your dynamic tag cloud for you. So you can put that in your sidebar without any extra.
And you can see this is just drag and drop. You just pick which one you want, and then some of these have, you know, additional customizations for that widget.
You've got a little widget. You've gotten some code from AdSense. You've got some code from my blog, anywhere else, and you want to put your little widget on there. You can have the text widget, and then you just literally copy and paste the code they gave you in the address bar, and save it, and it'll put that right into your sidebar for you. So you don't have to actually modify the theme, you just modify the widget. Then if you change themes, you've already modified that widget, and that widget goes with every theme that you change it to. And you've got an RSS widget, so if you want to feed from another website and show their latest RSS posts, you just put that RSS URL there, and what you want to show, maybe your own website, maybe another website, maybe you're on a podcast network, you can put that there so then you can refer people back to.
In case if you want multiple RSS widgets, I think that's the one you can do more. RSS and the text widgets.
This one isn't.
No.
Oh yeah,
Scroll.
down here.
Like the text widget, which is pretty much you can put in there anything you want. As a default, when the WordPress on there, it has one defined. Well, you can come down here, and if you need more, you can go ahead and say, like, hit the drop down, you can say, hey, maybe I need 5 of those. Hit that, hit save, and it'll go ahead and in that box where you can select the widgets, it'll create 5 of those. It'll have text 1 through text 5. And have the same thing with the RSS feed widgets and the category widgets. And just the same way that you have plugins and themes that you can download on the internet to modify WordPress any way you want, there are lots of pre-built widgets out there. We had one. We just. Was that time?
Yes,
Still good.
You're over.
we're done.
We're done.
We've got lunch, so if you want
Okay.
to go a little bit longer, feel free.
Oh. I have to eat, maintain my girlish figure.
Well, anyway, that's where you put the widgets. Theme editors, that's where you change your themes. It's more advanced, changing your, tweaking out your themes in the advanced class. But this is just kind of where it's at. All the files associated with the themes. Some themes have special option pages. That's all going to be under presentation. Plugins, when you upload them to the plugins directory, this is where they're going to be. So you can activate them, deactivate them, go find out if there's new ones. Oh, and one more thing I want to tell you about the dashboard. The dashboard, if you're doing your own install, this is where you're going to see if there's a new update. If there's an update to WordPress, it's going to show up there in your dashboard. Updates may include new functionality, and it may include security patches, and that's kind of important. So they can now put it there, and you can also get some feed information about what's going on in the WordPress world. So sometimes you see new plugins and new themes that have come up at Weblog Tools or any of the other projects. So.
Yeah.
I do that for you. What happens when you update WordPress and it breaks your plugins? Or if it does that happens again?
Now, if you look, that is possible. One of the things, if you actually look when there's like a new version of WordPress and you're going to do an update, first things they'll tell you, like when you go through the README, first thing they're saying is
First
when
thing
you
I say is deactivate the plugins.
deactivate all your current plugins, run the install, start firing them back up, see if anything broke.
If something breaks, if you forget to do that and your site now seems to be inaccessible, if you can get in through FTP, if you can get in through a GUI browser that allows you, some hosts have a little in the browser file manager. If you rename the plugin or move it, it'll be gone. WordPress can't see anymore. You won't break WordPress. It'll get rid of that plugin. It deactivates it for you then because it can't find it, and then you can get back into your site.
Which one do you recommend for spam? Because I mean, my WordPress blog is just inundated with spam requests. I have it set up on comment, and it's just I get so many come in, I can't even look through them anymore to see if they're spam.
Did you enable the? I always say it wrong.
Kismet?
Yeah.
Kismet? Okay.
Did you enable that?
No, I have not enabled the Kismet.
Now, I guess
It works pretty well.
You have an account at WordPress.com.
First, you have an API key that you have to get through an account at WordPress.com. So what I did, because I have multiple blogs, is I went and created that one account, and on that my now WordPress.com blog, I say, go check out my sites. And it gave me the API key, and then I go to all my blogs and use the same API key.
Okay, because I'm using a WordPress plugin on my podcastphone1.com, not at WordPress. So,
Yeah, you just got to have the API
Just
key,
set up
but they
a-
don't care how many places you use it. It doesn't have to be at WordPress.com.
It doesn't cost
You can
anything.
use that
It's just
same
to get the
API
API key.
Yeah, because I can find that.
And the Kismet does very well.
It does do that.
Because a lot of it, it'll automatically take some that is spam. I mean, so it doesn't even show up in your data. It's off there. You can go back and you'll look through that if there's something that possibly got tagged as spam, it should be.
5,000 to moderate right now when I last looked.
Yeah,
It's just nuts.
once you get a Kismet set up, then you can also do the glance at the whole page and then do the bulk moderated spam, and it'll kick it over to and get rid of it. And you don't even have to go back into a Kismet to delete it then. As long as it's marked as spam, it'll keep filling up, and you can go delete it whenever you want. Or you can just ignore it, and it'll automatically delete it.
It catches a lot of stuff as far as the spam. So it's really, really nice that the way it automatically catches it, gets it all categorized.
We tried a bunch of different other plugins that required a lot of maintenance. One broke, the site locked us out because we were considered spammers all of a sudden because something broke. That's one of the times we had to go in and delete the plugin so we could get back in. But
Only done that once.
yeah, we can use that one anyway.
But overall, the Kismet really seems to be working well as far as the spam comments. I don't think
It
we've
catches a lot of spam traffics too. It
Yeah.
catches all my spam so the blogs don't, go all over. It'll catch those.
are all those ones where people on a site, we've seen the ones where you've got sites that capture your new posts,
Yeah.
and they make it look like it's a new post on their site. They'll have like similar name,
Where's
wrote
that
this.
tag, you know?
I hate that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mind the ones, if they grab it from your site, and keep the author name and the links back to you, that's okay. If it says, hey, Linuxchic wrote this, and here's a link back to us, that's fine. But when it's saying, Joe Blow wrote this, and you're like, well, that's nobody on our site, like, where's that come from? But it'll capture a lot of that, which is really nice.
Yeah, you don't want those blogs and come back to you. I can always go ranks and if you fill up your contents and all that. Anyway.
That's it for that session.
We're back at 1:30.
Back at what?